Hello and thank you for joining us today on another episode of Creation Conquest. My name is Shane Blevins of Spirit and Knowledge Ministries, and I'll be your host. Today's lesson is on foundations. If it were discovered that Jesus never existed, I'm sure the evolutionist would agree that Christianity should be thrown out as a credible religion and relegated to the belief systems of the cult world. And I'd agree with him also. Luckily for Christians, the gospel is verifiably true by the fact that God foretold the Messiah's coming millennia prior to his arrival, and from the fact that we have a multitude of eyewitness accounts, which are recorded in the most abundant texts of ancient literature in existence. In fact, the New Testament surpasses by far any other ancient text out there. Let me better explain. There are over 24,000 New Testament ancient manuscripts currently in existence, the earliest copies of which are believed to be within 40 years of the actual event. To help you better appreciate this statistic, let's look at it in comparison to some widely historically accepted writings that are taught in history classes at your local schools. You've heard of Caesar's The Gallic Wars? There are 10 manuscripts, and they are about 1,000 years removed. How about Plato? There are currently 7 manuscripts in existence, and they are 1,200 years removed. Heard of Aristotle? And this is a big one. There's 37 manuscripts, and they're 1,400 years removed. There is absolutely no other work that even comes close to being reliably accurate as the New Testament, yet they are all given full credit in our school system. You know, today in America, we will easily convict and sentence someone to death by the account of 3 eyewitnesses in a court of law. Yet we have numerous eyewitnesses account for the resurrection of Jesus Christ, recorded in the most reliable and abundant ancient text in existence, and we don't count it worthy to be taught to our school children. Now back to the foundation of a belief system crumbling when its origins are exposed as false. Let's look at Charles Darwin, the patriarch prophet of evolution. In doing so, we can see that the foundations of this religion are in fact built on sand. Darwin wrote, "Natural selection acts only by taking advantage of slight successive variations. She can never take a great or sudden leap, but must advance by short and sure though slow steps." So basically, Darwin conceded that if it could be demonstrated that any complex organ existed which could not possibly have been formed by numerous successive slight modifications, my theory would absolutely break down. Charles Darwin's words. So what Charles Darwin is acknowledging here is that due to the fact that natural selection works on a principle of continually compounding improvements, if any multicellular organism were to be discovered that is rendered useless by a single step of reduction, then it would prove his theory wrong. This is a true statement. Simple enough and easy to understand. Well, let's just talk about one such organism. Bacterial flagellum. This is a whip-like organ that is used by some bacteria to move about in a liquid environment. This organ is embedded in the cell membrane and enables the bacterium to move in a chosen direction at a particular speed. Scientists have known about flagellum for some time. However, its structural details, which have only emerged over the last decade or so, have come to a great surprise to them. It has been discovered that the flagellum moves by the means of a very complicated organic motor, and not by a simple vibratory mechanism, as was once thought. This propeller-like engine is constructed on the same mechanical principles as an electric motor. Because the bacterial flagellum is necessarily composed of at least 3 parts, a paddle, a rotor, and a motor, it's irreducibly complex. Let me show you a drawing here to represent the bacterial flagellum. Now, take in mind, this is not a bacterial flagellum. I don't want the evolutionist to attack a detail here, but this is just a visual representation so you can kind of picture what we're talking about here, in case you haven't already pictured it. We'll pretend like this is bacterial flagellum. 3 parts to move this organ through the system. If you were to break down these 3 parts individually, none of them work. None of them independently work. So therefore, if they could not individually work, they could never evolve to become the multicellular organism that it is. Therefore, by Charles Darwin's own admittance, the theory is proven wrong. So by using Charles Darwin's own criteria, natural selection has been shown impossible. Yet proponents of evolution will simply continue to evolve their theory to avoid the scientific facts. I understand that when dealing with theory, you do have to adjust and modify as the test results dictate. The problem is that evolutionists have went well beyond the criteria laid out by scientific study and entered into the arena of religious zealots that fail to recognize that they've been following a false prophet. The hypocrisy and double standard practiced by these adherents to this pagan religion does not support the interest of science. Instead, they suppress historically documented factual evidence and perpetuate lies and misinformation in the classrooms of our nation. The origin of species has long been answered. Genesis 1:1 tells us, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Genesis 1:27 tells us, in the image of God he created him, both male and female he created them. We have documented evidence of the creation, yet the current perpetuators of evolution refuse to acknowledge it. They refuse to even let it stand in the classroom next to their falsified theories. You be the judge. Thank you for joining us on another episode of Creation Conquest.